and we'll come back to those who sat in education last night. You probably felt like we eat, sleep and repeat, so hopefully we're not here at 8 o'clock tonight, and we can get through it in a feminist fashion. Andrew, have we any apologies or substitutions today?
I haven't received any, Kavina.
Is there any substitutions or apologies from the floor? Nope. Excellent. Agenda item number 1's obviously our declarative interest. Does anybody have anything to declare? Excellent. Agenda item number 2 is the national audit findings. And Katrina, if you take us through this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the executive summary covers off the key points well, but I'll spend maybe just a minute or two just picking out some of those. So you can see that we were one of 6 councils that were selected for the National Audit Programme. The findings were published on the 14th of January, and they were very positive for us as a council. And you'll see again that we were highlighted as good practice for 4 out of the 6 key characteristics of what makes a good digital council. And there's some detail on that shown in paragraph 2.2. The 2 characteristics that we weren't specifically referenced for good practice are in the areas of user-focused and collaboration. And you can see from the commentary that we put in Appendix 1 that it was really more of a timing issue for us and when the field work was undertaken, because we have got plans through our new driving digital locally, and we've started to engage on that through the community boards just this week, and also some work that we're doing with the digital office to satisfy those specific recommendations that Audit Scotland have picked up on. But the key purpose of the report is to highlight any further actions that are needed, and the next steps that I've highlighted there in paragraphs 2.6 and 2.7 illustrate that we do intend to use that good practice checklist in the digital e-hub to help us to assess any gaps to make us better. But if I focus specifically then on paragraph 2.7 in the reference to the elected member checklist, so what that really is a series of questions to help you as elected members to scrutinise and challenge the progress that we're making digitally as a council. And I would propose that as a minimum that we're looking to share that with members of this committee, but obviously up for discussion whether you would wish for that to be shared with all elected members. And other than that, convener, I'm just happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Katrina. And I think on that, once that is established, we'll certainly share it with the business managers of the political groups, and then they can take that forward through their own parties.
Chair, thanks very much. I agree that in summary, the principle of the report very, very positive, and it puts North Lanarkshire Council in a very, very good light, as do other reports that are made up for today's agenda. However, one of the key questions I would have is obviously it was touched upon in relation to you driving and your engagement with communities at the moment, and that's going to come through the community boards process and things like that. Is there any sort of scope within this report in relation to the change of platform? Because as many as know that Zoom and various other platforms like that are preferred mechanisms for local community groups. And my concern would be is if we don't start to look at those platforms in relation to how we engage with local communities, then we may miss the opportunity to take this further forward.
Thanks. Katrina, do you want to pick up on Councillor Lennox's point?
Yeah, so we're not using Zoom at the moment, Councillor Lennon, just because it wasn't recommended by the Scottish Government due to a whole host of technical and security issues. And you'll remember that we've covered in the past that obviously just because of the nature of the route into the council and the firewalls, etc., that we need to make sure that there are no backdoor possibilities at all. But so I'll maybe bring Grant in just to pick up on the technical aspects, because we were recently looking to use Zoom by exception, so may well have done so for the community boards, but there was a technical update recently that actually prevented us from doing so. But if you don't mind, I'll let Grant respond on the specifics, because yes, totally understand that point.
Okay, Grant.
Afternoon all. So no, Zoom is not something that we're actively still promoting, but you're at 100% right. We need to be looking at, you know, what are the customers using out there, what is their social media interaction, and how can we adapt to fit in with that. We use Teams natively internally. If you haven't used it yet, that's what you will be migrating towards, and you can use it externally, and it will be your preference. What we have to remember is with any of these applications is that as soon as they start generating data for us, then we're responsible for that data, and that's one of the big issues that sits around about things like WhatsApp and sits around about Zoom. So it's getting the right governance practices in place, but the right technology in place to allow us to get these things to function. But it's absolutely a thing that we need to look at and see how can we do this and engage with the clientele out there better.
Thanks, Grant. Greg, quite happy with that for now, yeah? I think you're on mute there, Greg.
Quick supplementary, Chair. Any parent in amongst us at the moment that's obviously doing homeschooling is quite versed with Teams and the complications the process brings. And again, obviously, I'm sure officers will take that on board when they're looking to develop any sort of platforms. But as I say, no, it's refreshing to hear that we're looking at other methods here. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's regarding the members' checklist. It's just to find out what sort of feedback, well, not so much feedback, what feed-in will the members have into the actual creation of the checklist. I understand the officers and recommendations with the Scottish Government will feed in, but given that it's going to be it's going to be a checklist for members, how much feed-in will the members have and what say will they have on what's on the checklist? Because, for instance, we're on this committee, we're aware of things that are happening. Our colleagues that are off the committee aren't. So we might give feed in to say, you want to have a checklist for X on this. So available for somebody that doesn't sit on the digital and is on, say, education, for something that reflects on education, but is purely coming to this committee.
Fair enough. Gina?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cameron. So the digital checklist that I was specifically referencing in the paper is one that has actually been prepared already by Audit Scotland, based on those 6 key characteristics, and they think there are a number of questions to help prompt elected members to truly understand how to become a digital council. However, it really just is an aid to allow elected members to do that scrutiny. So once we share the process, if there's any questions that you don't like or anything that you feel needs to be fleshed out a bit more, then happy to take that feedback back through the group business managers and create a checklist that's tailored to the council.
Quite happy with that, Colin?
Yes, thank you. That's good to know.
Good. Councillor Linden.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Katrina. In terms of page 11, Appendix 1, the reflections on citizens at the heart, I'm just wondering, in relation to the customer service hub development, I wonder, beyond the scope of the community board structure, how we ensure seldom heard voices are active and involved in informing the development of the customer service hub to ensure it's user-friendly and doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Linden. So yeah, the aim of driving digital locally is to be a new stakeholder engagement. So first pass at that, because we say that we do want to involve all our citizens at the heart of everything that we're doing, is to bring an update and then some proposals on how we could engage with the communities to the boards. And we started just as we have with all of the community boards, depending on the topic, to ensure consistency, a high level presentation on that, and then we'll develop that further based on that feedback. But that's again just one element. We've had in community and engagement plans coming through committee in the past, and obviously we had to pause those due to COVID. So we will bring the proposals back through probably the next cycle of the committee. But as we've said many times, and in my own attendance at community boards, the seldom heard voices is the bit that we're really trying to get to, and particularly our young people. And you've heard me say before, that we're really keen to try and get members of some of the youth forums involved. So we're looking to use these meetings of the community boards to try and get a little bit more excitement in that. But again, happy to take any suggestions at all, and in fact the presentation's highlighting that we're looking for people to help promote us and get that message out there so that we can make sure that we're capturing all voices.
Thanks, Katrina. Are you happy with that, Councillor London? Excellent. Don't see any further questions, so if we can agree to note the report as laid out in page 5. Agenda item number 3 is the data and information roadmap, and Linda take us through the points on this.
Thanks, convener. So the report outlines the information management and data governance policies for the council, and we had asked our business partner PwC in late 2019 to carry out a full review to find out where we were with regard to managing, storing and processing our data, and to make sure that the benefits that were contained within the business case for Digital NL would be realised as part of our data management going forward. As part of that, and as is, our current state assessment was carried out with a number of tools, and they're highlighted in paragraph 2.1 of the report. And essentially, this was carried out to identify on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the optimised use of data. We wanted to know where the council sat on that data maturity curve. And from the information that we've received, it was also to look at where we use our data as far as our strategic and operational decision making, looking at cost reductions and a number of other areas of our business. So we currently sit between initial and basic on the data maturity curve. And then section 2.4 of the report goes on to reference the data and information management strategic roadmap, which is, it was a link in the document. We didn't provide the full document as a supporting one, but there was a link in this report for the full document. But in there, there's a number of recommendations and actions that our business partner had set out for us, so that that would allow us to move through the different stages of the curve. And these have been categorised under the 5 themes that are highlighted in the report. We have 2 areas of governance around this just now. We have a data governance board within the council and a data management team. And on there, there's strategic direction around this from the data governance board. And then there's service representation across the data management team. And the 17 actions that have, or the areas that have been identified, many of those are already underway. And there's 5 key activities that are highlighted within the report that we felt that was important to highlight to members, and there's a status update attached to those as at the end of January. So you can see that we are making progress. There's also a number of next steps outlined in section 3 of the report, and that's particularly around our future developments for data custodian, data steward and data architect roles, and these are critical roles that will be developed within each of the services, and that will help to deploy the data and information management roadmap further across the organisation. And you should also note, members, that this is a 3-year potential programme for this. It's not something that we can just move up the data maturity curve overnight. There's a significant amount of work to be done and a lot of evidence to be presented. And convener, I'll hand back to you for the recommendations and any questions.
Thanks, Linda. Councillor London.
Thanks, convener. Thanks, Linda. Section 2.7 of the report outlines a series of recommendations. Just a quick question to establish whether the recommendation on the development of a formalised data quality framework, is it the intention to progress this recommendation? It's not currently in progress, but is it the intention to progress it over the course of the 3-year programme? And perhaps is that what section 3 alludes to?
Yes, Councillor Linden, yes, it is the intention to put that data quality framework in place over that period, and we will be bringing back future reports to this committee on the progress with all of the 17 areas that have been highlighted as part of that data and information management roadmap.
Thanks, Linda. Councillor Cameron. Councillor Cameron, have we lost?
Councillor Cameron still seems to be on the call, convener.
Yeah.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, my question is regarding the timescale. 3-year programme seems, given the complexities and unknowns of the programme, 3 years seems a little ambitious. shall we say, is there a scheme in place that can deal with any sort of overrun if necessary? Because I personally I would be happy for it to see it take 4 years, 5 years if necessary, to make sure there was no mistakes given the consequences to the council if there is a data leak or unanonymised data getting to the wrong person. So that was just my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cameron. Certainly ambitious. Linda, do you want to pick up on that point?
Yes, convener. So at any stage in the programme, if there are issues that we need to identify back to committee or a recalibration of the timeline, then again, this would be brought back to future meetings. But we are confident from the work that's already been done by our business partner and through the Data Governance Board that the actions that we've outlined are achievable.
Thanks, Linda. If there's no further comments or questions, we can agree to the recommendations on page 15. Agenda item number 4 is the financial monitoring report. Katrina?
Yeah, thanks, convener. So this is a standard financial report in respect of the Digital NL programme, and it is as updated at policy and strategy in October last year. And this specific report is detailing the position as at period 10. So again, just to pick out a few key paragraphs. So capital, paragraph 221 and 222. So currently projecting a break even. But at the time of writing, you can see in paragraph 222 that we still had just over £2 million of approved resources uncommitted. And again, the essence through the report is that was largely as a result of us having to continually delay planned sprints to support the COVID requirements. But we have got a significant amount of work underway to re-baseline all of our activity just now, and expect to be able to have a more up-to-date financial position as at period 11. For revenue, key paragraph is paragraph 232. It illustrates that our expenditure is in line with expectations, with just under £4.9 million of the £5.8 million reserve currently expected to be needed in this year. There's a breakdown of that in Appendix 3, and Appendix 4 also highlights the intention as at period 10 to carry forward 880,000 into next year to cover off the costs of the fixed term contracts that we've got in place, and that details come through committee before. So that brings me to section 2.5 and Appendix 5. And the first time we've been able to put together quite a lot of detail on the progress so far in delivering on the budgeted savings. So it was always going to be challenging to deliver the target, because the target was identified early in 2019 and was on the basis of the high level full business case release plan. So when you then layer that and the delay to bring in Agilisis on, and again all of that detail came through committee as to why it took a bit longer to get our system integrator partner in than we'd initially thought. But more importantly, the need for us to constantly redeploy our resources to COVID activities, then we've actually had limited opportunity to realise savings this year. But if I focus on Appendix 5, which hopefully gives you a good flavour of how that's starting to develop, just let me get to Appendix 5 very quickly. Yeah, so you'll see that we've now fully completed work in 2 areas. The full year impact of the changes and the transformation that's gone through equates to 694,000. But once you offset the costs of all of the new posts in the customer services hub, then our recurring savings from next April onwards is just under £500,000. And with the time delay in actually getting them people transitioned into the posts and the new ways of working, then we're actually only going to achieve 94,000 in the current year. But from the 1.1 million in the recurring aspects of that, then I'm not overly concerned about that because we've got 4 sprints underway just now. They were the ones that you'll see from reports later on that were due to start in April, but we actually only got them back up and running again in January. So we've got 4 underway just now. They're going quite well so far, and we do envisage being able to deliver savings from those 4 through next year. Other than that, hand back to you, convener, just for any questions.
Thanks, Katrina. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Linden.
Right, thanks, Katrina. Thanks, convener. Just in terms of Appendix 3, Katrina, and obviously when reflecting on the contents of the report, particularly around the section 2.3 on the revenue, the projected actual yield to date in terms of the budget to date, the variance is favourable for 360,000. And when we're looking at the utilisation of the digitisation reserve offset against the HRA and capital programme, is there additional revenue remaining at the end of that? And if so, where is that being deployed to?
Katrina.
So Appendix 4 probably gives the better position there, because Appendix 3 obviously gives that breakdown. But if you're focusing on Appendix 4, then it's the top line is our opening balance was 5,759, and we're projecting to spend that 3,762. That gives us that gap of just under 2 million. You then have to offset those recurring revenue costs. And we're obviously at that point in time projecting to get just under 400,000 through HRA. So that's that 880,000 that I picked up on, Councillor Linden, that's our starting point for next year. But again, we're then working out what we need to spend in the way of our revenue reserve. But when the investment model was approved at Policy and Strategy in October, then we had an idea of what we were going to be getting in from capital and from HRA. So as at period 10, those closing reserve balances take you through the programme to the end of the year. But I am absolutely expecting that will fluctuate at period 11, because we're spending a lot of time just now just to identify of that 2.7 million that we didn't have full plans for, how that's going to look. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Linden.
Thanks, Katrina. I don't see any further questions in the chat bar, so if we can agree to note the recommendations on page 69. Agenda item number 5 is the communications and engagement activity. Linda.
Thanks, convener. So this report is the regular report that Katrina referred to earlier on in the meeting. And for our engagement over the last quarter, the main focus has been on the rollout of Microsoft 365. And as we transition that into the digital workplace, there have been a number of communication drops with our employees as they've been moving through into that whole migration piece that we've brought previously to the committee. We've been monitoring the Yammer group that's been set up, and this is really a kind of support network for all of our colleagues, that they share hints and tips with other people who are going through the migration process, and that continues to provide a good source of information and support for our staff. We also recognised in this period that the training and development materials that were loaded as part of the planned rollout, we have reached over 1,600 hits with the various pieces of material, and these stretch over 750 pieces that are very small, couple of minutes videos, right up until in-depth training programmes. And we've got over 500 courses completed for our staff as well. I think it was important to note that in December we undertook the first of the staff surveys following the rollout. There was 1,620 users at that point had migrated to Microsoft 365, and we had targeted all of them. We got a 23% response rate, and we've carried out some early analysis which is contained in paragraph 2.7. The full detailed analysis, when it's available, which it should be shortly, will be authorised and actioned by the Digital Workplace Steering Group, which is the main steering group for the Council as we transition, made up of members of each of the services, and also with our staff who use assisted technology. We've mentioned this previously in reports to this committee around the 60 members of staff that we have and the work that we carry on doing with them to make sure that they're not disadvantaged in any way as we move forward with the migration process, and that work continues to be well reflected. You'll also recall that Stephen Penman, our Head of Strategic Communications, attended the committee and as rightly was pointed out earlier on as well in the meeting around the standing up of the Customer Services Hub. And we were particularly, it's important to us that we move into that self-service arena and we move through the My Account authentication for our residents and users of our services. At that point, Stephen had identified a stretch target of 100,000 My Account users by the end of March this year, and at the moment, but by the end of January, encouragingly, we have around 72,000 registrations, so we are well placed to meet that stretch target that was set. Section 213 of the report goes on to talk about our recent stakeholder engagement, and again, Katrina mentioned some of the activity that we have been doing this around our community boards, and I'm pleased to say that from the session that I did in the Northern Corridor Community Board the other evening, we already have representation come forward to join our stakeholder engagement driving digital locally programme that again has been outlined. I think it's important to note that our framework for engaging with our communities, elected members and our staff will develop over time. We did have a bit of a blip in November when we lost our communication and engagement manager for the programme. However, I'm delighted to say that we have recruited and the new person will take up post on Monday. So we've lost no time there, and that will allow us to gather traction in that engagement framework and progress the actions that are highlighted in section 2.21 of the report. And I'll hand back to you, Convener, for the recommendations and any questions.
Thanks, Linda. Councillor Stubbs.
Thanks, Kenny. The two parts to my questions. In terms of, first of all, the Microsoft 365 rollout, the specific is there's obviously a number of devices in the aren't suitable for Microsoft 365. That includes councillors' laptops. The only reason I know that is because it was rolled out onto mine, presumably an error, and it caused the laptop to stop working altogether. I had to go back into IT, and they tried to roll it back. They've done what they can. It's now working, 80% of the way. It means that I can go on. I can't go on it. I don't use it for these meetings or anything like that. So my question is, how many times has the 365 been rolled out to devices that aren't suitable? And because that obviously causes an overall delay as they have to get these devices back in to try and get it back off of them before they're replaced. My second part of the question is in the trade union engagement. It's good that there's commitment to more trade union engagement throughout this whole process. And we obviously 6 weekly scheduled meetings. I'd be interested, I don't know if Marie's in a position to give an opinion from the trade union side, but if she is, I'd be interested to hear if the trade union side feel that that's enough, if there's more that can be done, or if they're content with how the council is managing that particular engagement.
Thanks, Councillor Stubbs. I mean, I don't know if Linda or Grant have the specifics in terms of numbers, probably not at this point, but we can certainly get it to you. Linda, is there anything you want to add to that?
Not specifically, but we do have a migration plan, Councillor Stubbs, and we do monitor it very closely. Grant may wish to come back in on some of the technical aspects, but we can get the information that you've specifically requested to you. And as you say, the trade union engagement and the briefing paper that's also submitted prior to that provides a detailed overview, and obviously Marie can come in on that as you've requested.
Katrina, you want to add?
Yeah, on the specific numbers, then we can provide that. The next report or final report for today has got a lot of detail about some of those issues that Councillor Stubbs had mentioned, and we have got a programme to replace the devices. So we haven't had many, and obviously accidents do happen where it's been rolled out without the device being replaced, because we've got a catalogue where we can identify which ones aren't suitable. And actually that was one of the reasons why the workplace implementation ran a bit slowly, because we hit all those technical problems right at the beginning, and which was more challenging because we were doing so from home. But yeah, we'll commit to providing the detail on the device numbers to all elected members after the meeting. Marie can obviously come in on the trade union engagement, but I guess just to provide a bit of context. So yeah, it says, you know, that because we're delaying and we weren't sure when we were going to start back sprints, then we were just reverting to high level. Here's what we're looking at, here's what might happen. But at the most recent trade union meeting, then we presented the sprints that we expect to run all the way through, looked at all of the stages of how that might work, and when we thought that union engagement was particularly crucial. But that's only one meeting, Councillor Stubbs. There are lots of local trade union meetings, and what we were proposing to the unions is, so this should hopefully give enough information for them to plan to make sure that they've got attendance when needed. But obviously, if Marie wishes to add anything further, then that would be good. Thank you.
Marie, I'll bring you obviously in on this point. Oh, can't hear you, Marie. Oh, there you go.
Forgot about that bit. I think it's safe to say there's been a few false starts up until now. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting. I think, as Katrina says, there is activity at a local level, and it really does help to have scheduled meetings with briefing papers beforehand. So just to answer your question, Councillor Stubbs, we are so far so good, and I think this sort of method of a regular and scheduled communication at a higher level, as well as the stuff that's happening on the ground, should be pretty useful.
Thanks for that, Marie. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually got a couple of questions. I'll start with, I've got a couple surrounding point 2.7 here. With the actual feedback here, it's saying we've got 23 respondents returned, 23% of respondents responses returned out of everybody. They got the questionnaire, and it's saying that 91% advised that they use digital technology, and 86% of respondents were over 35. I was looking to find out with 86% if that is actually reflective of the workforce in reality, and the 91% advised they use digital technology. I was wondering if that was actually a relevant question to ask, because as far as I was aware, all the council staff use digital technology in one form or another, even if it's just to access their schedules. Even for the bin routes are now digitised. So I was wondering if that was actually a relevant question, or if it should be something like if it's used extensively in the role or something like that, because otherwise it's kind of a redundant question. The other question I've got is something later on. I'll leave asking that till I've had the response on 2.7.
Thanks, Councillor Cameron. Obviously 9% disagree with you. Linda or Katrina, do you want to pick up on a couple of points that Councillor Cameron made?
Yes, so I'll come in, and then Katrina can pick up if she wishes to do so. So one of the things we were trying to find out, Councillor Cameron, is yes, you're absolutely right. In most jobs now across the council, there is some form of technology utilised. The questions then go on to break down into categories of how often you do use your technology, but we do still have a number of job roles that, whilst some of the scheduling is done through the technology, actually on the ground operations are not touched by the digital world. So we wanted to find out how often people used and how much usage across their job role was. So I take your point on board, but there are supplementary questions that we just didn't have available with the analysis for this committee.
Thanks, Katrina. Do you? Oh no, that's from the previous question. I do apologise. Councillor Lennon.
Councillor Duffy, I did have another question on a later part. I said I would wait till I got the first answer.
I do apologise. Would you like to give that now?
No problem. Right, it's regarding the My accounts that were mentioned in the communicate and about the communication back from that. I'm aware that there was issues surrounding the setting up of accounts with the latest rollout of a grant, and there was feedback, at least on social media, about how people couldn't set them up with certain web browsers, etc., and on certain devices. I was looking. I understand it's too quick to actually have a full understanding and all the feedback on that. I'm just looking to find out: are we looking into that? Find out exactly what happened there, and are we going to get feedback later on the actual how many people have put in complaints about not being able to set up the My accounts, etc. I'm bringing that up here because it was actually mentioned. The My accounts were actually mentioned.
Grant, are you best placed to talk about the technicals in regards to that?
Probably not in this instance, because I don't have the information to hand. But I wasn't actually aware that there was people who were experiencing problems. We certainly would be able to identify if there has been complaints read through the complaints process and bring that back into play. No problem at all. But certainly the numbers have been increasing in terms of registering on My account. I mean, I think we're nearly up to about 80,000 now on that. So clearly people are registering. It's getting them to continue to utilise it rather than just registering for one thing. The business grants type thing is definitely saw an increase on it, but getting them to use it to engage with the council in other ways, I think, is a key driver. But we can certainly take that away and see what's going through the official complaints procedure.
Thanks. Katrina?
Yeah, like Grant, I can't respond on the specifics, but I do keep an eye on social media, on Facebook, etc., about the council. So that's why I was aware that there were issues, and I guess just to give assurance, you know, when we're rolling out any new technology, any forum, then we do document any issues. So in some of those instances, when people did have technical difficulties, we were then working with the Digitisation to address those. So anything like that, then we will have a record of. I hadn't intended to bring that level of detail to committee, but if members would wish to see that, then happy to do so. And any complaints at all, then it's, you know, we are very much saying we can't design things for our people if we don't understand what problems they're having. So we're happy to take all of that feedback so that we can incorporate that into our design moving forward.
Thanks, Katrina. Grant, you want to add?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges that we'll always have here is that we can't control what devices that our customers have, and if somebody has a device that's 10 years old or hasn't received proper updates and such, like that's always going to be difficult for us. But we do have a range of devices that we test against to make sure that access works. But it's such a wide range, as I'm sure you appreciate now that sits out there, the devices that people can use and age of those devices. That it is a challenge. So it's maybe something through community groups that we should be looking at of trying to advise people on what sort of devices they should be using without actually getting involved and pushing them in any particular direction, but how they should be keeping them up to date and reminding them of some of the challenges that they have, not just for dealing with us, but for their own benefits in terms of shopping and such like as well.
I'm Linda. Oh, mute Linda.
Sorry, convener. Didn't want to labour the point too much, but it's just to say that in the instance that was specifically mentioned, we've got to look at the fact that My account is hosted by Scottish Government. It's a Scottish Government service that we then integrate with as part of the work that we do. So we've been working with the improvement service around some of the initial complaints that have come through, where people go to create their My account and then they're not given the authentication that's required. So I think from Katrina's point, when we bring the report back to this meeting, then we can identify which parts of the process you go through initially with the Scottish Government platform and then where it switches into the council's platform.
Thanks, Linda, and I'll give you that assurance, Councillor Cameron. If there is any of those specifics that you'd like to see back further down the line, we're quite happy to bring them in a form of paper. Councillor Lennon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm briefly going to touch upon Councillor Stubbs's point in relation to the report under 2.2. As Councillor Stubbs said, the modernisation or the migration to new devices, I'm sure there'll be a number of devices that are no longer suitable. What would the plan be for those devices in relation to moving forward? The ones that are redundant.
Linda?
So, Convener, I think it would be better picked up under the next report, because there is a lot of information contained in the digital update report that Katrina referenced as well, where it highlights the number of devices that, as part of the rollout of the one user, one device strategy, that we will be no longer requiring a number. And if I go to look at the report, I think off the top of my head it's around 800 devices, but I'd quite like us to pick that up in the next one, if you don't mind.
No problem. I'm sure Councillor Lennon will wait to then. That's no issue. Councillor Stubbs.
Thanks for letting me back in. Now, it was just in the kind of discussion on my account and self-service and whatnot on the systems, and this might be an issue more for the service committees, but I think as a committee overview of everything in this, I'll raise it here as well. Are we experiencing a drive in the number of people contacting the council either by phone or via councillor or other means due to the holding emails that are sent out after a response, after a contact, sorry, which regularly give ridiculous. I mean, I get why they do it, but some of the timescales are ridiculous. For instance, if you report a missed bin, you're getting a response that would lead you to believe, if you've never contacted them before, that you won't actually get a response until after the bin is scheduled to be collected the next round. I wonder if we could have a proper review of the holding emails that are sent out to constituents while they're waiting for a proper response from a person.
Thanks for that, Alan, and obviously, like you, regardless of party, we all suffer the same sort of frustrations at times. I think even if I go to some of the service conveners and have that discussion and you feed it back in, to all elected members, that we have to look at it. Obviously, as elected members, we want to be getting back to our constituents as fast as possible for obvious reasons. So I take that point on, and I'll feed that back in and get a conversation about that and see what service committee would be most appropriate to go back to, and I'll let you know. Councillor McCulloch.
Thanks very much, Convener. Jennifer Lees gave a fantastic presentation last night in relation to driving digital locally at the Shotts Community Boards meeting, and the number signed up for my account last night, I think, was 73,376. Hopefully, Greg, it's up to 80,000. I think everyone's confidently rushing to the 100,000 mark before the end of March. Thanks, Convener.
Thanks, Marty. Don't see anybody else on the chat bar, so if we can agree to the recommendations on page 77. Our last report is the Digital Annual Programme Update, and Grant, if you could take us through this.
Sure, thank you. So this report provides a high-level update on the work associated with the Digital Annual Programme. Within section 1, we take opportunity to remind committee of a number of reports that came across their desk in the last year. The report itself, mainly we're trying to focus here a bit on some of the internal objectives that the programme has had. So if you look within 2.3, what it's doing is it's kind of highlighting the shift in the device policy that we've had.
Convener, sorry to interrupt. Councillor Cameron's just put in a point of order.
Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, not to be pernickety, but I want to keep us legal. You said page 70 something and approved the recommendations. It was actually agenda item 5 was actually page 31, and it was for noting. It was just to make sure we were on record and legal. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Councillor Cameron. Apologies, Grant.
That's okay. So 2.3 starts to talk about the devices that we have in the estate, which is kind of pertinent to the questions that was going to asked earlier. What we're trying to do is move towards a one computer per user policy. trying to use a laptop first policy. Obviously, that's been driven home an awful lot more due to COVID responses and home working that we've had recently. To refer to the question earlier on, we replaced over 2,000 devices in 1920. We have bought in 1,500 devices in 2021, and we've rolled out about over 1,000 of them. One of the things that we need to remember is that we're classing these devices as not suitable for using M365 with Teams. So actually trying to repurpose them to give back out into community and such is a problem from that perspective, because we're saying that they're not fit. But the other issue that goes against it is that these devices all potentially have sensitive data on them because the organisation has used them. So we need to go through a process of data wiping. Now, we have that through an existing contract that we have through our service delivery partner, Wipro. The devices go to a third-party company called Retech, an company called Bride, who perform either a data wipe or actual removal of the hard drive and a shredding of the hard drive. They then look at the device themselves if they can repurpose it, and then sell it for spares or sell for components. The council does get money back on that, a percentage based upon the sale that they achieve. It's not great sums, but it allows us to dispose of items from a WEEE perspective correctly, environmentally. So if we had to try and repurpose devices internally, some of these devices, and give them out to third parties, public or whatever, one would be the issue around about the device suitability when we're saying it's not suitable from our perspective. But two would also be the fact that we'd still have to pay then at that point to go through that data wipe process. So it would actually cost the council to get those devices taken away, wiped, presented back in, and then handed back out again. Of course, that ignores the whole problem of once you give a device to somebody, what level of responsibility do you have as an organisation if they have a problem with that device for X amount? I hope that kind of gives a bit of background to that area, but feel free and come back in after. Within 2.4 and 2.5, we're referencing here the external requirements for us to understand the technology infrastructure we have and have clear plans to address these challenges. And what we're saying is that through the programs that we've implemented, like the Digital NL program and some of the governance groups that we have in place, Enterprise Architecture Governance Group, we actually have some really good governance and habits now getting put in place to be able to deal with some of these things. And I think we're in a very good place for it. To indicate that in kind of 2.6, talking about the number of devices per user, 2 years ago was sitting roughly at 1.36 devices. A lot of that would be due to the fact that there was a lot of desktops in use, and what people would have was what is classed as pool laptops, and they would go and sit in a cupboard, and if somebody needed a pool laptop, they would go and get a pool laptop out. And we used to sit with something around about 20% of our estate being on laptops. You can see the significant change on that. By March this year, we're probably going to be sitting at just below 90%, and we're hoping to reduce the number of devices out there to a ratio of 1 to 1.6. There's a lot of licensing that's associated with each of these devices that we have, as well as the support of these devices. So there's cost elements that sit against the council that makes it, certainly worth our while making sure we have a tight control of these. Never mind making sure that the people who are using them should have the right device to carry out the right job. Within 2.8, what we're trying to talk about here is the impact that the home working and really the COVID recovery has had on us. What we're seeing is 50% more calls coming through is on average than the previous time last year. Even simple things like a telephone call through to the service desk is taking twice as long as it used to. That obviously has a massive impact on the SLAs that we have and the performance that we can deliver on that. But it is understandable. 2.9 is an interesting one, because obviously part of the whole Digital NL program is to look at cultural change. Yet what we can see here is that only 7% in the last 2 months of people internally within the organisation have self-served through the portal, where the vast majority of them, 87% there, are still either phoning or using email. So that's a big challenge for us to go back. We have issued out emails, we have issued out communications, pointed people in the direction of self-serve. I think, to be fair to all, but the change that everybody's had to go through in the last year, not being planned, is meant that it's been challenging for everybody. And I think to refer back to the 7 minutes per call from 3.5 minutes per call. Believe it or not, we anecdotally find that when people phone up the service desk, half the time they're looking for a chat, along with trying to report a fault and get something fixed. And maybe that's just relevant to the fact that everybody's sitting in their homes. In 2.11, we highlight some of the key components that we've now moved out into Microsoft Azure. It was another one of the key things that we were looking to do. And we continuing with that, we have another set of applications that we're looking to move out there. 2.12, a wee bit more detail on the M365. These numbers are actually slightly out of date. We're over 50% of migrations completed within the organisation. I understand the comment that was asked earlier on about the number of people who have maybe mistakenly migrated before they've had a new device. It has happened. There has been a few, and I think when you're dealing with 6,000 odd users, 6,000 odd device, 5,000 odd users, keeping track of devices and who's got what device is a key component for what we need to do. But there is opportunities there for things to fall through the cracks, and if it's happened to you, I apologise for it. For yourselves, the device refresh has all been managed through member services, and I'm sure some of you will already have received your new devices, but they've been handed out by Louise and Irene, and I think that there's a programme there for pushing them out and taking individuals through some training where that's required as well. 2.13 gives a brief overview on the service redesign for year 2. Again, having to make the point that a lot of what we've had to do here has had to be delayed and altered due to the response to COVID, and whether that's just using business solutions to work in a slightly different way, or whether it's been some of the challenges by working with the services and getting them to the table whilst they're having to go through all these changes at the same time has been particularly difficult. However, we have launched the Microsoft Dynamics platform. We do have Waste Solutions now working out on that. There's a healthy kind of proof of concept and service design going on against scheduling for adult healthcare and social care, which we obviously hope to report back on successfully later on. Some of the things that we have managed to do that we weren't planning to do, obviously previously, is things like the business grants, particularly the business grants for taxi drivers, where we managed to turn that around really, really quick and get it up onto the new digital platform. We had previously done templates online, but that was on the old platform. Bringing it through the new one allows us to automate some of the back-end processes in there. So that's been a massive success for us, I think, and well welcomed. As I say, within 2.14, really highlighting the fact that we've had to divert resources and be responsive to the COVID-19 response. And in 2.15, it's anticipated that at the next meeting of the committee, we'll be able to present forward the full work packages in May 2021.
Thanks for that, Grant. Thanks for touching on some of the points raised earlier. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually got a few questions as regarding this. Now, you're saying that we're moving, the plan is, and I understand that it's been for a while, to move over to all onto laptops. Now, the issue I'm going to raise is, in 4.3, it says no environmental impacts. That's patently false, because we have the simple issue of moving from desktops to laptops means that we've got fewer upgrade cycles we can actually use the devices for, and desktops as opposed to laptops, a larger percentage of the actual unit can be recycled, broken down, and used for other things, whereas a standard laptop with a hard drive, such as most of us buy, will be able to have the hard drive pulled and possibly have the unit reused. For instance, where we've got the issue of, for instance, the current councillor laptops are solid one-piece units. that we've only had for what, 3 years, which is a very short period of time. And they've got, I believe they've got the integrated memory chipset, which means they're basically useless because you cannot pull the hard drive from it. Now, what's worrying me is the fact that we're looking at a shortened cycle on the rebuilds, and that we're also probably going to look at a higher level of actual landfill waste, a higher environmental impact from this. Now, I understand that may be offset by a lower power usage, etc., but I think it is something that we need to highlight and make plain that it isn't going to be no environmental impact, and that we're actually going to go through a higher refresh cycle on all the computer equipment by the looks of it. I just need to make sure that that is something that everybody's aware of.
Grant.
Yeah, so the market itself is moving towards what's called solid state drives as opposed to hard drives. And solid state drives are much more performance orientated towards fitting in with the M365 platform that sits there as well. So it's we don't really have a choice. It's happening to us whether we like it or not. The vast majority of laptops that we've saw kind of go out has certainly over the last year has been very much as a response to COVID, as we've tried to accommodate home working, taking desktops out of the office, repurposing them, but just actually having people been able to use them in their home. It's obviously, you can take a laptop and you can slide it under your couch at the end of the day when you're finished with it. It's not quite as simple to do, to do with the desktop, particularly because it's all wired up with screens and such like. So it's kind of, that's been driven a lot by the COVID recovery. In terms of devices, unfortunately, we are all now locked in to a kind of 4 to 5 year device refresh. If you think of your mobile phone, it's very similar. The manufacturers who make these devices will only keep track with the operating system providers, in this case Microsoft, for so long. So that basically means for us to stay compliant as an organisation, we are actually tied in to replacing devices roughly every 4 years moving forward. The days of us being able to keep devices and milk them for 8-9 years just isn't going to be there. They're not performant anyway, but we just are not able to do that anymore. It's as soon as we've moved to Microsoft 365 and Windows 10, which you had no choice because the previous ones were falling off anyway, you're tied into this constant evergreen process that Microsoft drive, and in effect, we're all prisoners to that. And it's, like I say, it's very similar to your mobile phone scenarios. If you've had, I think I remember the one just a few years back where a lot of people, WhatsApp stopped working on their mobile phone, a particular Android level of mobile phones, and it's because WhatsApp had decided that they were only going to support it to certain levels. If you hadn't updated your system, and of course your system couldn't be updated because your manufacturer only supported it to certain levels, then all of a sudden the app started to fall off. So for us to keep track, we do need to have and just deal with a constant device refresh strategy. And that is actually what we're trying to do and build in. And I think, rest assured, in terms of the recovery that we get out of the components that Retech do, that's all we accredited to make sure that they absolutely minimise the amount of stuff that goes to land refill and try and make sure they get the maximum amount of refurbished components back out of that.
Thanks,
Supplementary, Chair. Well, in that case, and I brought this up at I think it was one of my very first transformation and digitization meetings. You're saying we're locked into Microsoft. We're not actually. We have the ability, if we so choose, to follow other countries and move away from Microsoft and move to an open source software that will last longer than the 5 years. There is that availability to us. Now, I know it would be a much more large piece of work than we're currently doing, and it would be something to look forward to in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'd like to put that out there, that we aren't necessarily locked into Microsoft. We can move away and have a much more sustainable approach.
Thanks, Cameron. That's noted. I don't see anything else on the chat bar, so if we can agree to the 4 recommendations set out in the paper, Thank you very much, and everybody have a lovely afternoon.